There is someone you have been trying not to think about. You may not even be aware of how much space they occupy in the quieter parts of your mind. The early morning, before you've fully woken up. The pause between tasks at work. The moment before sleep finally takes you. You tell yourself it means nothing. You tell yourself you've moved past it. But here you are. What I want to say to you is this. The fact that this connection has not resolved itself is not a weakness in you. It is not confusion. It is not obsession. It is information. And most people never learn how to read it. This is not a message for the faint of heart. This is for the person who feels something they cannot fully explain. Something that refuses to follow the logic of their life. Something that disrupts what they thought they knew about themselves. Stay with me. Because before this connection can become what you feel it could be, before any of it makes sense, 3 things must happen inside of you first. Not to them, to you. Let's begin at the beginning. You have been carrying something silently. That is the most important thing I can tell you right now. You have been holding an emotion that does not have a clear name. Something between longing and restraint. Between certainty and paralysis. You feel drawn toward this person with an intensity that unsettles you. And because it unsettles you, you have learned to manage it, to suppress it, to redirect it. You check your phone less deliberately than you used to, or maybe more. You find yourself constructing reasons why this would never work, cataloging all the practical objections as though logic could overrule what you feel in your chest. You have probably had entire conversations with this person in your head that they will never hear. You have rehearsed what you would say. You have imagined their response. You have played out multiple versions of a future that has not happened. And then, in the middle of all of that, you pull yourself back. You remind yourself of reality. You remind yourself of the complications. You remind yourself that wanting something this much is dangerous. That restraint is not weakness. It is actually a kind of wisdom, even if it does not feel that way. But restraint alone is not the answer. Suppression is not the same as resolution. And what you are experiencing right now is not something you can simply decide your way out of. The question is not whether you feel it. You do. The question is what this feeling is trying to show you. Here is something most people never consider. The connections that disturb us the most are rarely just about the other person. There is a part of the human psyche that remains hidden from us, not because it is dark or dangerous in itself, but because we have been trained since childhood to deny certain aspects of who we are. Parts of us that were too loud, too soft, too hungry, too much. Parts that didn't fit the version of ourselves we were taught to perform. Over time, we fold those parts away. We do not destroy them. We simply stop looking at them. And then someone enters your life and somehow, without even trying, they reflect those very parts back to you. Something in their manner, their presence, their way of moving through the world, touches something you forgot was there. This is the first reason certain connections feel so inexplicably powerful. It is not always chemistry in the conventional sense. It is recognition. A part of you recognizes something in them, and that recognition creates a pull that ordinary attraction cannot account for. The intensity you feel is not irrational. It is proportional to how long those parts of you have been waiting to be seen. It is proportional to how long those parts of you have been waiting to be seen. The more deeply you have suppressed certain desires, certain versions of yourself, certain possibilities, the more electric it feels when someone appears who seems to hold the key. This is the first thing that must happen before this connection can be what you want it to be. You must recognize what you are actually responding to. Because if you don't understand why this person moves you so completely, you will project onto them more than any one person can carry. You will make them responsible for your healing. You will need them to confirm something about yourself. And that need, that unconscious demand, will distort everything. Now let's talk about the restriction. Because there is one, isn't there? Maybe it is external circumstance, timing, distance, commitments on one side, or both. Maybe someone is unavailable in the most literal sense, and you have found yourself in the uncomfortable position of feeling deeply for someone who is not entirely free to feel it back. Or perhaps the restriction is more internal, a fear, a wound, a belief that you are not ready, not worthy, not safe enough to want this out loud. There are also restrictions that come from identity itself. The way this connection challenges how you see yourself. Perhaps wanting this person requires you to revise something fundamental about your values, about your choices, about the story you have told yourself about who you are and what you need. These restrictions are real. I will not romanticize them or tell you they don't matter. They do. But I want to ask you something, and I want you to sit with the question rather than answer it too quickly. Is the restriction the problem? Or is the restriction a mirror? Because sometimes what feels like an external obstacle is actually reflecting an internal one. The unavailability of the other person mirrors your own unreadiness. The timing that feels wrong corresponds to your own unresolved places. The moral conflict you feel is not just about the situation. It is about the parts of yourself that this situation is forcing you to examine. This is not a comfortable thing to consider. It is far easier to blame the circumstances. But if you can look honestly at what is actually being asked of you here, you will find the second thing that must happen before this connection can become real. You must resolve what this connection is revealing about your own inner life. Not explain it away, not suppress it. Resolve it. There is a particular texture to this kind of connection that I want to describe precisely, because if you have felt it, you will recognize it immediately. Maybe it is external. Circumstance, timing, distance, commitments on one side or both. Maybe someone is unavailable in the most literal sense, and you have found yourself in the uncomfortable position of feeling deeply for someone who is not entirely free to feel it back. Or perhaps the restriction is more internal, a fear, a wound, a belief that you are not ready, not worthy, not safe enough to want this out loud. There are also restrictions that come from identity itself. The way this connection challenges how you see yourself. Perhaps wanting this person requires you to revise something fundamental about your values, about your choices, about the story you have told yourself about who you are and what you need. These restrictions are real. I will not romanticize them or tell you they don't matter. They do. But I want to ask you something, and I want you to sit with the question rather than answer it too quickly. Is the restriction the problem? Or is the restriction a mirror? Because sometimes what feels like an external obstacle is actually reflecting an internal one. The unavailability of the other person mirrors your own unreadiness. The timing that feels wrong corresponds to your own unresolved places. The moral conflict you feel is not just about the situation. It is about the parts of yourself that this situation is forcing you to examine. This is not a comfortable thing to consider. It is far easier to blame the circumstances. But if you can look honestly at what is actually being asked of you here, you will find the second thing that must happen before this connection can become real. You must resolve what this connection is revealing about your own inner life. Not explain it away, not suppress it, resolve it. There is a particular texture to this kind of connection that I want to describe precisely, because if you have felt it, you will recognize it immediately. It moves in waves. There are periods where you feel nearly free of it, days or even weeks where this person occupies less of your attention, where you feel clear and grounded and almost certain that you have found your equilibrium. And then something happens. A memory surfaces without invitation. You hear a song. You dream in a way you cannot quite recall, but wake from feeling strange and tender. And suddenly they are present again, as fully as if no time had passed. The silence between you, if there is silence, is not neutral. It has weight. There are things unsaid on both sides that accumulate over time, and you feel their presence even in their absence. This is not imagination. This is what unresolved emotional material does. It keeps moving until it is addressed. The push and pull that you feel, the moments where you reach toward this person internally, if not overtly, followed by the retreat back into distance and safety. That rhythm is telling you something. It is telling you that you are holding two things simultaneously: a genuine draw toward this person, and a genuine fear of what surrendering to it would mean. Not fear of them, fear of yourself, fear of wanting too much, fear of being wrong, fear of what happens if you open fully and it doesn't hold. That fear is understandable. It is also, if you stay inside it, the thing that will keep this connection permanently in the realm of almost. Always significant, never complete. Always affecting you, never transforming you. The energy you are feeling is real, but energy without direction is just turbulence. The question is not whether the feeling is valid, it is. The question is whether you are willing to follow it honestly, all the way through. This is the part I need you to hear most carefully. This connection, whatever form it takes, whatever it becomes or doesn't become, is not primarily about them. It is about who you are becoming. The people who disturb us most profoundly are not random. They arrive at precise moments in our lives. Moments when we are right at the edge of something. Right at the threshold of a version of ourselves that is more honest, more integrated, more whole. And they function, whether they intend to or not, as a kind of pressure. They press against the places where we are still closed. They illuminate the gaps between who we have allowed ourselves to be and who we actually are. This is not mystical. It is psychological. It is the natural consequence of two people whose unresolved material aligns in a particular way, whose growth edges happen to meet. And when that happens, everything that has been dormant in you begins to stir. The longing you feel is real, but look closer at what you are actually longing for. Is it purely them? Or is it a version of your own life that they seem to represent? a freedom you haven't let yourself claim, a depth of feeling you have been afraid to admit you are capable of, an intimacy that requires you to be more fully present than you have ever allowed yourself to be. The third thing that must happen, the most important one, is this. You must separate what you want from them from what you need to give yourself. Because if the life you imagine with them is actually a life you need to build for yourself, independently, regardless of their presence, then this connection is doing exactly what it is supposed to do. It is pointing you back to yourself. And the greatest disservice you could do to both of you is to make them responsible for a wholeness that only you can create. This does not mean giving them up. It does not mean walking away. It means going toward yourself first, fully, without conditions, and seeing what is still there when you are no longer running from the incomplete version of who you were. Let me speak to you now, not as someone in the middle of this feeling, but as someone who has come through it. There is a version of this story that ends in collapse, in obsession, in the slow erosion of your own center as you orient yourself entirely around someone else's availability, someone else's choices, someone else's timing. That version is seductive because it feels like devotion. It feels like proof of the depth of what you feel. But it is not love in its mature form. It is love refusing to grow up. And then there is the other version, the harder one, the one where you take what this connection has shown you and you do the actual work, where you stop waiting for their presence to make you feel complete, and you build the life, the inner life, that draws them to you, not out of need, but out of genuine overflow. This is what emotional maturity actually looks like. Not the absence of feeling, never that, but the presence of yourself underneath the feeling. The capacity to hold the full intensity of what you experience without being dissolved by it. To want something deeply and still be able to stand in your own integrity when the timing isn't right. To remain whole even in the presence of incompleteness. Your power in this situation is not in pursuing more aggressively. It is not in retreating further. It is in returning to yourself, consistently, deliberately, without apology, so that whatever happens with this person, you are not diminished by the outcome. Because here is what I know with certainty. People who have done this work are magnetic. Not because they are performing security, but because they actually have it. And that quality, that settled, earned, lived-in wholeness, is more compelling than anything that comes from chasing or from waiting. The three things that must happen are not things that happen to you. They are things you choose. You choose to understand what you are truly responding to in this connection. You choose to resolve the internal material it has surfaced, not suppress it, resolve it. And you choose to separate what you want from them from what you owe yourself. When all three of those things have happened, when you are no longer looking to this person to complete something in you, the connection either becomes what it was always capable of being, or it reveals itself as something that was never about them at all. Either way, you are free. I want to leave you with this. There is a version of love, a real one, a sustainable one, that does not depend on perfect circumstances, that does not require you to be anyone other than who you are at your most honest, that has room for complexity, for imperfection, for the slow and sometimes difficult work of two people choosing each other not from scarcity, but from genuine recognition. That kind of connection is not built on longing. It is not built on distance and silence and the electricity of the almost said. It is built on the willingness of two people to show up fully, consistently, with their actual selves rather than the idealized version that lives only in the imagination. You are capable of that. What you are feeling right now, even in its confusion, even in its discomfort, is evidence of that capacity. The depth of feeling is not the problem. The depth of feeling is the raw material. What you build with it is the question. Stop running from what this is showing you. Stop managing your way around the edges of it. Go inside, steadily, honestly, without drama, and meet what is actually there. Clarity does not come from chasing. It comes from becoming clear within yourself first. And when you are, truly, not as performance, the path forward will not feel like a choice between two impossible things. It will feel like the only natural direction for someone who finally knows their own worth. You are not confused because you are weak. You are in the middle of something important. Trust the process. Do the work. And trust yourself to know, when you are ready, and not a moment before, exactly what to do with what you find.